Welcome to Tell This Story, the podcast where we dive into the real-life experiences of veterans, first responders, and their families. I'm your host, Doug White. Today we have a special guest and my new friend, the host of the Next Shift podcast, Jess Flores. Jess is a former law enforcement professional and now a mindset mentor and transition coach. Jess is the founder of the Next Shift, where she empowers officers transitioning out of law enforcement and helping them to create fulfilling post-life careers. Jess, welcome to Tell This Story.
Thank you.
How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor, and I'm glad I can be your new friend because that's what I feel like we are. I think the more of us share our story and really get to see each other for who we are, it really brings us together, and I can appreciate that.
Yeah, this is great. And as I said last week, and a couple of times that we've met, and I should probably give the background for everybody listening, and well, for the three people listening. So I am very new to this space, and my own transition, getting on LinkedIn and finding the algorithm and finding people in the space that I wanted to be in, the law enforcement first responder transition, which is a scary off ramp. And I want you to be able to talk to that as we proceed through this episode. But I found you and several others in this space and just started engaging. And then I got invited to the debrief, and that's where everything kicked off, just the networking there and the speaking authentically that happens in the debrief and the things that you're doing. Secretly wanted to be a guest on the Next Shift, and I got that opportunity for season 3, episode 1, which dropped just yesterday. Was that the 6th? Yeah, the 6th of November. So this is going to be a couple weeks away, and hopefully you'll get some more traction on the Next Shift that we did, which I've already said I've listened to a couple of times. You did a great job and really peeled back a lot of my layers. So without any further gibberish from me, tell us about you.
Yeah, so I come from a small town in the Midwest, Kansas City, Missouri area, but very small town growing up as far as like 40 kids in my class type of small. And then I knew that while I was glad to be raised in that, it wasn't for me. Like that wasn't the life, that there was a bigger world out there. And I had no examples of people going out there and seeing what that world was. Everybody from my hometown seemed to, graduate, get married or have kids first and then do the other one and just stay in this small town community and mindset. And that works for some people, but it never sat well with me. I just figured there's so much more out there. And I mean, from a very young age, I grew up with a grandpa. He was the only other law enforcement member in my family, but he would come by our house every Sunday and give us donuts and a Sunday paper in his squad car, which was incredible to see, and play with the lights and all the silly things that we liked back then. We would go visit him when he worked off duty at like Walmart and see him in his uniform. We were always getting an icy and like a pretzel or something. So there was always something fun and food related with grandpa. But unfortunately, when I was 10 years old and 6 months after he retired, he passed away in his sleep. Literally, we hugged him goodbye on his 61st birthday. We hugged him goodnight. And at 7:00 the next morning, we were awakened to a blood curdling scream from my mom getting the news that my grandpa had died. And at 10, you don't really realize or understand the impact that will have on you. But the next few days were very much a blur. I blamed myself because when we moved into our house 3 months before that, he joked that he wanted my bed because it was fancy and it was a new mattress. And since I didn't give that to him as a 10-year-old, I blamed him dying in his sleep on me. Obviously, that was proven wrong over time. But when we went to his funeral and I saw that clearly he made an impact in this world by the amount of people that showed up in police uniform and a Marine Corps uniform, because he was also a Marine Corps veteran, I knew somehow in my little 10-year-old brain that he was part of something bigger than himself. And I think at that very young age of 10, it was implanted in my head somewhere back there that, wow, that's something I should probably look at. And again, I didn't know what that was. That same year, we had the Oklahoma City bombing, and you saw everybody running to this building to help people and save people. It was a traffic stop that got that asshole and got him in custody. You started seeing things like O.J. Simpson was also that year. And it was really, again, at 10, you can't put these things together. But when you're looking back, you're like, oh, okay. That trial, I mean, I was glued to my TV with my mom watching it. And when he got off with that, I was like, okay, we got to do better. Either the police work's got to be better, the prosecution has to be better. These victims need voices that matter and will be there for them when they can't speak for themselves. And again, at 10, you don't know what that looks like. Looking back, I can say that that's what was in my head. But I just grew this fondness of all those mega trials that were always on TV or court TV. I was that nerd. I would sit there and I would watch it. And I was just enthralled by them. And then when you saw the injustices happen, you were like, oh my God, this can't keep happening. Like somebody's got to fight for these people. And so at 18, I went to college because that's what you were supposed to do. I had no desire to go to college, but I went to college here in the inner city. And I decided, let me go do a ride along. Let me see what this is about. I knew I wanted to be an investigator someday, but I did not know you had to be a street cop first. Like the movies don't show that part. CSI was like my jam, and they were investigators who didn't have to do street cop work. So that's in my head what I was going to do. Not the case. I joined the Citizen Police Academy. I was probably 40 years younger than every single person in that Citizen Academy, but I had a freaking blast. I loved seeing all that stuff. And I did that ride along. And as soon as I got to the station, the desk sergeant was like, sorry, your guys are out on a call. I got to take you to them. So he took me there. They just got done with the foot chase. They just tased this person. The person was in custody. And I was like, holy shit, this is fucking amazing. Like this is nothing I had planned. And then like our night didn't stop. And this is Kansas City, Missouri. So, I mean, it's a small town compared to some, or small city, but we're a very large city in our area and a very violent city, unfortunately, in our area. And I was hooked. Like hook, line, and sinker. I think it helped that they were really cute cops. Like, I don't know, at 18 years old, everything just came together. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. So I switched my major from biology. Whoever let me go to school for biology, I don't know. Like, I don't know what that was about, but I switched it to criminal justice like a dummy. But here we are. I did not finish. As soon as I took a few of those classes, I was like, I don't care about the history of policing, to be very honest. I don't care about juvenile justice reform. I care about getting out on the street, learning the job, and doing what the academy is going to teach me. Like that. I don't want extra stuff. I've never been that person. Like if it's not going to help me in my job, I don't care, to be honest. So as soon as I was 20, I applied for the police department. I did the written test. And again, back then, man, we had hundreds of people applying for this job. So we filled an auditorium at a local community college. I passed the written test and was like, it was a week before my 21st birthday. And then we did the physical test the next day. And I remember going to that gym and watching people try the obstacle course before we ran it. And they were defeating themselves because they were showing themselves they couldn't do it. And I was like, oh my God, I can't do that. Like, no. So I just sat there and I waited my turn. And when it came my turn, I did it. I did everything I was supposed to do. And I was like, holy shit, like clearly this is right. Like I'm supposed to do this. I was no physical specimen by any means. I was barely 100 pounds, maybe, soaking wet. So I was like, okay, cool. That's neat. Went through the rest of the process. And I remember sitting on my oral board and they all asked the question, like, why do you want to be a cop? And my answer, most people say, I want to help people or whatever. My absolute answer to them was, I want to be a voice for the victims. And they all just kind of like stared at me. And I was like, what? I go, I want to be a voice for the victims, the people who can't speak for themselves. Like somebody's got to do it. And I didn't realize at the time that it wasn't just the ones who couldn't speak for themselves, but the ones who wouldn't speak for themselves that made the biggest impact on me. I would go to work. Clearly, I made it on the department. But as I worked and I got to see a world that I knew nothing about, I did not grow up that way. I was not raised in an area like that. I thought at 21 I was invisible. I thought I could change the world. I could not understand why these people didn't see more of a life for themselves than they were currently facing. And I was so young and I didn't even have my own life experience at that point to show them that there was a way or there was another way. And that was heartbreaking. Loved my time on the street. I absolutely fell into, we talked about this on your episode, the persona of being the cop and doing whatever it took to stay alive on the road. My first year, we had 7 officers shot. And none of them were very like local to like the district I was in or even the zone I was in. But a year in, my academy classmate was a district partner of mine, and him and a couple others were in a foot chase where the guy pulled a gun and shot him in the foot. They disengaged and killed the suspect. And this was not even a full year in. I was 9 months in. And I remember getting to the scene and the guy wasn't dead yet, the suspect. And I remember watching the life drain out of his eyes on the street there. And I wanted to do the most, I don't even know the word for it, horrible things. I wanted to spit on him. I wanted to kick him. I wanted to do things that I had never in my life even dreamed of, imagined of, thought, because of what he did to my friend. And it was in that moment that I did feel a piece of my soul leave my body. I remember feeling it. And it was this fuck you, us versus them mindset developed in me at 20. I think I was 22 at that point, 22 years old. And it was like nothing I had ever experienced before, but it became the way I could survive on the street. I learned how to disassociate from every single call we handled there. And there were a wide variety of calls. I mean, I was looking at kids laying dead in the middle of the street and being like, okay, well, that sucks to suck. Like, that was the mindset that I had developed. Or like, well, their life has led them here. Or fuck, their mom doesn't even care. Like, she's at a club right now. Like, it was so hard to like wrap my brain around what it had to be like to live in that environment. And that us versus them, as much as it helped me get through there and stay alive, it did not help me as a person. And Halloween of '09, I actually ended up getting shot at from some little punks at a Halloween party. And you guys can hear that story on my podcast. I don't need to go into full detail, but the department betrayal I felt from that incident, because I didn't shoot back. Detectives asking my sergeant on the scene, my sergeant called the detectives, and from their office, well, does she really feel like a victim? And I was like, Sarge, 3 bullets flew by my head. I heard them. I felt them. Like, yes, I feel like I was the intended target of those bullets. There was nobody else here. While I had this other punk at gunpoint because he had a gun. So the department betrayal coupled with, well, the community hates me. Now my department doesn't want to fucking support me in any way. And because I didn't shoot back, I get nothing. Like, I'm confused by this. I guess I think I was 24 at that point. I guess this isn't the line of work for me. I'm not speaking for victims. The victims won't even freaking talk to me. So I can't be a voice for them. I'm not going to change the world. Let me get the heck out of here. And I chose to leave that department for about a year before the calling of law enforcement calls you right back. It wasn't because it was over. It was just, I think, a lot of burnout, midnights in the inner city for 4 years. Yeah. It'll take its toll on you.
Well, that and 7 officers
Yeah.
shot in your first year.
Yeah.
And then someone from your class being the 7th within 9 months.
Yeah.
I mean, that type of apathy, it's going to come in.
Yeah.
Compartmentalization and stuff like that, the things that we do to survive, our brain does that for us.
Yeah.
And then to switch to that level of apathy after 7 shootings, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
I mean, I even talk about that in the book where you turn from empathy to apathy, and fuck that guy, had it coming, and that's a horrible place to be in for what it is that we do, and to recognize that at a young age, and to reconcile. I know that during the episode that we just did together, we talked about faith and being able to reconcile your faith with doing this job and how you feel about people. It's, even though there are true victims in the sense that you became a victim that day because of one misstep, or that was just the day, there are people in this world that are victims of their circumstance due to decades of bad decisions.
Yeah.
Not that they asked for it, but they really didn't do anything to help them.
Right.
And then when you deal with that a half dozen or a dozen times during a shift, at some point, the natural reaction is going to be, well, your car burnt to the ground. We used to sit around and it's like, I wonder what the Carfax is going to say.
Yeah. The dark humor and the jokes that
previous
we
smoker,
through it, yeah.
Clean, what do we do? So, that's part and parcel of some of the baggage that we carry as first responders. But I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was proud of myself when I left that department. One, because I did it on my terms. I got to choose that I was leaving because I truly did not like the person I had become. I finally could look at myself and be like, what is wrong with you? And like we talked about on our episode, like, I wasn't raised that way. It was such an internal struggle of, I have to do this because I'm here and this is how we do things. This is how we do our job, versus this is wrong on so many levels of how I am treating people. And so I think the year and a half, I think it might have ended up being off, was probably good. I got a CNA license just to see if I wanted to go into nursing. I thought, well, those are people that save people too. Like maybe that's it. But dude, one too many colostomy bags and watching one too many people with cancer come in and like die on me. I was like, I I think I'm supposed to be out there on the road still. So anybody that has felt the calling to be a cop, like the true calling of it, knows you cannot just give it up. So I applied for another department, a smaller department surrounded by Kansas City. I mean, it was only 9 square miles, a very small city. But it had a lot of the same people that I dealt with at Kansas City. So I thought, okay, this is a good mix. I made it very well known from the beginning. Hey, I've done patrol, kind of over it. I know I've got to do it, but my goal is detective. Like that's what I want to do. And so I did that. We had 5 homicides my first year there, and they didn't know what to think. I was like, sorry for bringing that, apparently, because they did not know how to respond to that. And there are some of those cases to this day that still haunt me because the assholes are out walking around just because of not great police work and a feud between a prosecutor and a chief that just really sucked for the people doing the work out on the street and trying to get justice for these victims. But it is what it is. I did my time in the detective unit, and pretty soon I saw a need for leadership. And I thought, man, with the experience I have from the inner city and not stressing about these little crime scenes, plus my now work as a detective and understanding a whole crime scene and the whole process and how it all fits together from the initial answering the call to prosecution, I think I got a shot. Like, let me put in for this. Never wanted to be a sergeant, never wanted to be above that. Put in, got it, and was like, well, holy shit, okay, here we go. Rock and roll. But that meant giving up my Monday through Friday 8 to 5, go back to midnights type of thing. And while I had been in the detective unit for about a year and a half, I had started developing like this severe pain in my right hand, which is my gun hand, the wrist and hand both. And I think it was all the extra writing and typing I was doing because I'm very, very, very thorough. And I was like, oh, it won't be a big deal. So, I was wearing a brace on my wrist when I got out to patrol again. And I would just rip it off right before I got to a call. That way, nobody saw a weakness. Nobody knew, like, oh, let me go after her. And there came a time about a year later where I literally could barely grab my gun. Just the way you have to cock your hand backwards to grab it, it wasn't working the way it should. And the pain, like I couldn't even hold a pin, like a normal size pin, I could not hold. And I was like, what is wrong with my hand? So I went, I got an opinion from a doctor. He's like, oh, yeah, you're going to need a surgery, but it's just quick and simple. Like 3 months, you should be good as new. Cool. I was like, all right, sure. Let's do it. Let's get done with this wrist brace and just back to normal. I was only 31 at the time. So I had the surgery. I had like 3 or 4 months of physical therapy. We're still not any better at all. Tried a different type of physical therapy. I think they called it occupational therapy. I don't know, where they just massaged my hand and did paraffin wax on it. I was like, I don't understand this, but okay. Still didn't work though. Got a second opinion because it wasn't better. And the doctor's like, I don't know why it's not better. It should be better. And I'm like, well, you're the fucking genius. So like, tell me. But he couldn't tell me, got the second opinion, and she goes, here's the deal. I can go in there, but if I do, I'm probably nicking a nerve and you're just going to lose all feeling in your hand. And I go, okay. So I either have to deal with what I'm dealing with or I have to just not feel my hand at all, which either one, I'm not going back out on the road. I could never forgive myself if somebody got hurt because I can't act the way I'm supposed to be able to act. And as lame as it was, because people would see me at the gym, people would see me, doing things. And I'm like, it's just a hand. It's like this little part of my body. And unfortunately, it's just a very important part for police work when it's your dominant hand. So I decided, I think tomorrow, actually, I was talking to Dr. Baumgart the other day, and I was like, November 8th is the day. Like it's been 8 years, November 8th, since I resigned from the police department. And I use resign lightly because I don't feel like I had a choice. I feel, and I felt especially then, like my body had failed me and took the one thing I was meant to do on this planet away from me. And I was angry for a really long time. I was sad. I was confused. For for a very long time. So that was, again, 8 years ago. To look back to 8 years ago, I'm like, what was wrong with you? But I now know like what that transition is like. And especially when it's an unwanted one, what that feels like and what that does to a person. And it's a hard time to look back on, that's for sure. But I sat in that state of misery for about 2 years, and then things started changing.
Yeah, it's an easy place to build a house for a while. You're sorting out a whole bunch of unresolved stuff, and now you can no longer do what it is that you were meant to do. And I I think about that with coming out and asking for help. Like you said, you would take the wrist brace off before you got to a call, so nobody would see that as a weakness and key in on you. Well, we all know whether it's a reality in whatever organization you may be in, but when you're in the first responder world or the military world, there's a sense that you cannot show any type of vulnerability,
Right.
and vulnerability as in a weakness. Because if you do, you're going to be singled out, just like in the animal kingdom.
Oh, yeah.
The limping wildebeest is going to end up as lunch.
Yep.
And I think that stigma is going away quite a bit now because of the things that you're doing and others in the space are doing. But when you have to face that, and you are now I don't want to say a victim of that, but now when you find yourself in that position that you have to make that choice, and the choice that you made was absolutely right. It was dangerous. If you could not have taken care of yourself, being alone, because were you all single rider? Well, you were
Oh, yeah.
supervisor. You didn't have a partner at the time.
We were such a small department. And again, I was a sergeant. Like, you shouldn't think, oh, you're going to have to handle calls, but we were such a small department that I was just another
You're
cop
going
on the
to.
road when I was there.
Yeah.
There was no separation.
No, and there have been cops getting breakfast
Yeah.
and find themselves in an ambush
Yeah.
while they're having a cup of coffee and some eggs. So you never know you're a target just because of the shirt you wear and the car you drive. That's got to be a hard pill to swallow. And I think a lot of people, one of the reasons they don't come out and ask for help or make that call that you had to make. And I've seen people do it. They get out of the academy, they go to the street, and their first week in FTO, they're like, bro, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And, people will do the low class thing and they'll talk trash. I couldn't hack it. You didn't know it was going to be like this. The junior varsity move of that. But if you look at it from a mature lens, the person found out that this is my limit. This is not something that I want. But there are others in this world that when they were 10 years old, this is what they wanted.
Yeah.
They knew this was their purpose, their path. And to tell them or to have to reconcile with the fact that this is something that I may not be able to do physically or I can no longer do emotionally for whatever reason, that's a hard pill to swallow. Not only do you have to deal with your own emotions on that, but if you're the primary breadwinner in your household,
Right.
now that affects my ability to provide for my family. So yeah, it's very easy to slip into that woe is me or they did me in or how come my body's giving out on me. So that's a tough road.
Yeah.
But what has that led to you now? Or led you to now? I mean, are you still being a voice for people that aren't using their voice?
Yeah, and it wasn't honestly until a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I was doing an Instagram live and I literally burst into tears. Hashtag I've learned to be vulnerable. It's been the greatest thing ever. But I was doing this Instagram live. I don't even remember what it was on, but I had this full circle moment where I was talking about something and I was like, holy shit, like with what I do now, I am getting to still be a voice for quote unquote victims, those who won't or can't speak for themselves because they're in a department still. So they're fearing retaliation if they speak up, if they ask for help, if they comment on a post about the transition, they're worried about what people are going to think or say or whatever. So thankfully people have learned to just message and that's fine. But man, I'm like, what is this fear? So now I'm getting to speak for those people. And I was like, holy full circle moment. Like, not that they're victims, but they are almost a victim of their circumstances. There's still a stigma in law enforcement, unfortunately, that we're battling through and we're fighting through, but I'm now not tied to one. So I can say whatever the hell I want to say and I can say it however I want to say it. And it's going to hit the right people in the right places. And I will tell you the people I talk to the most are probably the 7 to 11 year guys who are like, I cannot do this for another 10 plus years, 20 plus years. They just see no hope, no end in sight. And I'm very proud of them for recognizing like that feeling, but it also doesn't mean that they have to leave or that they have to leave the profession. It may just be they need someone to hear them. They need someone to take what they're saying and maybe reframe it, or maybe like say it back to them and let them hear how it sounds and help them, empower them to take control of their circumstances where they are. And again, maybe it's not at your department, maybe it's at another department, maybe it is at your department, but when you take ownership, you see things in a new light, or maybe it is getting out. Maybe it is that is your best choice for yourself, for your family, or whatever it is. And we have to stop fearing that as a police department and like, oh my God, people are doing what's best for them. No, we can't have that. We've got to get away from that. Like, that is not ideal. We were taught to be robots for the longest time, and I can attest to being a robot for the longest time. Yes, sir. Yes. Well, following whatever the man told me to do, woman, whatever, whatever they told me to do, that's what I was doing. I had no ability to be who I was on the inside. That's where that first internal struggle at the big department came from, was I wasn't even getting to be me. I had to be this other version, this other persona to do the job. And at that time, especially without anybody talking about this stuff, I didn't see another way for there to be. So now, thankfully, there are plenty of us out here talking about this. But there are still some people in there, man, that they cannot see what it is like on this other side. They feel like it's unattainable almost, and it's not, because there's now more and more and more of us coming forward and saying, hey, here's my story. Hey, here's how this has changed. Hey, here's how this, or this is what I messed up with, or this is what I did that really helped me through that part. And it is helping, but we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I know before I retired, I would see the retirees coming back, like they would start burning vacation. So they'd be gone for like 6 weeks, and then they'd come back for the retirement party.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, a month to 6 weeks, they've lost 10 or 15 pounds. Their hair is darker. They don't look gray. Like, not their hair, but their skin. They don't look gray.
They have life back in
they've
them.
got pink cheeks. They're happy. Their hair's gotten darker and thicker. It's like, what are they doing? And, oh man, the retirement is this and retirement is that. No, it's not. Because if that were true, I'd be hearing it from the organization.
Right.
So wait a second. There's other things outside of there. And, when I got closer to retirement, I started thinking, man, I'm going to get thin again and this and that. And, it's a lot to look forward to, but it's scary as hell, especially if the off ramp is a very short off ramp, an injury, or say there's a case that, your career just could not withstand, or, yeah, I mean, it was a scary thing when I did it. I know that. I know we talked about it last week, but for you, that 2 years of transition, what was it that helped you finally turn that corner and say, hey, I can do this for other people. I've got my stuff figured out.
Yeah.
Maybe I can help other people figure it out.
Yeah. So the initial thing, again, within that 2 years, I took mindless jobs that had zero purpose to them. I just had to pay bills. So I was taking jobs. I was definitely not getting the jobs that I thought transferred from law enforcement to, say, like insurance adjuster or things like that. Like the jobs that I thought were the ones I wanted. Somehow I was getting these jobs and I'm like, that makes no freaking sense. But looking back, it all taught me little bits and pieces to lead me to where I am today. And that the first job I got out of law enforcement was actually like a financial services trainee job at TD Ameritrade. Bless them for taking a chance on me. I showed up with my police resume. I showed up in a red Chief shirt because the Chiefs were playing after my interview and talked about it.
We're not talking about the Chiefs today.
We won't. Sorry, sore subject. And then, I just full on told them as I went to answer questions, I'm like, my answers are going to be far different from anything you hear from other applicants because my experience is law enforcement. I will try my best to translate it to what you're asking me here. And they were like, actually, that's very refreshing. So the people who are afraid of that being a thing, you were a cop, own it. Like, own what you were. That's what you did. That's what your experience is. Pull from it and prepare yourself for the interview. Be able to know what they're doing and expecting from people and translate the two. There's plenty of help out there to do that now. But that was the first time we had to take like a 6-hour test, and you had to pass with, I want to say, a 70 or 72. And I remember getting done and putting my hands over my eyes like, oh, fuck. And I hit the button to grade it. I was like, oh my God, I passed with the lowest score you could pass with. And I bawled. I bawled. And I didn't give a shit about the financial industry. I just needed a job to pay my bills. So, but that was the first little glimmer of hope. Like, oh, if I put the work in, I will get the result from the work that I put in. I can do, if I can pass this shit, I can do anything. And thankfully, it was a week or two later, my husband was like, yeah, I think we're done up here. We're going to go back to Kansas City because we had moved out of here. He's my husband now. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like, I don't have to do this. I'm glad I had it. Cool. Let's get back home. So we came back home, and again, more senseless jobs, whatever. But it wasn't until that, literally the month of, it would be 2 years from my surgery, I think a week before my surgery, I finally gave in to a fitness program I had been watching somebody do online for 2 years. I had followed her for that entire 2 years. And I had seen her change not only her body, but her mind, and then so many other people's. And I was like, I just kept sitting there watching, like, that must be nice. That victim mindset, that must be nice. Well, that's easy. They don't have this, or they don't have that, or she doesn't work at a real job, or, the
Yeah.
bullshit excuses we always say when
Mm-hmm.
we can't do something. So finally, I was sick of my own shit. My dad was facing the same issues my grandpa had faced prior to his death at a slightly younger age. And I was just sitting there getting fatter and fatter and fatter. And I was like, what the fuck? Okay, well, I don't want to die like my grandpa. I'm half his age. So let me just go all in on this. And I mean, I did. I went all in on a fitness program that was 80 workouts, and in 90-ish days, I knew I wouldn't be perfect. And that was the first time in my life I accepted that. I knew that there is zero chance I'm doing 80 workouts in a row, 7 days. Like, I know that that's not going to happen. My birthday, my husband's birthday, some other celebrations in there. One day, I know for sure. I gave myself 10. I gave myself 10 days to not be perfect with the program, whether it was missing a workout, not eating 100% according to plan. But what I realized very quickly was, you don't have to be perfect. You can very much so be imperfect, and you can do the best that you can one day at a time, and you're going to get results. And one thing that really helped me was the accountability group I was part of, with thousands of women who were showing up with brand new babies, like 4 kids, running a household by themselves, boots on their feet because they had like a broken ankle or something. And I was like, okay, if these bitches can show up, I got nothing. I can show. I have a cat, for God's sakes. Like, I can show up. So it was really that accountability group that kept me going. And it was full of people who had done the program, most of it, people who started with me, and then people coming in after me. And I think that was what really helped, was like, okay, if I keep doing the work, I'm going to get to where they are. And then these people are looking at me seeing, well, if she keeps going, then I can keep going. And it was this just incredible thing. So I kept going. And in 90 days, Doug, I kid you not, I was a different human being from the inside out.
I was going to say, through and through, you had to be.
My mind was, I think you said it, unfuckable with, like, in my episode, like, that rookie confidence glow that I had when I graduated the academy was right back. And it was like, wow, Jess, wow, you can do whatever you put your mind to. And you've just proven it again to yourself that you can do this. And as much as I like could visually see the impact of those 90 days on my body, I burst into tears. I bawled again, when I proved to myself I could do something after doing the work. I bawled like a baby. I couldn't even start my workout on that last day because I took my photos first like an idiot. And I remember messaging my coach being like, holy shit, like, what? I don't even know who I am. And one of the biggest pieces of their programs is personal development. And it was 10 minutes to 10 pages a day of personal development you should be reading. And I was like, fuck that. I don't need that shit. Well, turns out I did need that, because when I leaned into that and I was seeing that, I'm kind of fucked up with how I think about things. And I'm a pretty good pessimist, and I'm a pretty good fixed mindset person. And I was able to shift those things to growth mindset and like, oh, wow, I don't know everything. And oh, wow, I have to take ownership of the shit that's happened in my life. Oh, okay. It all just culminated. And then I was kind of hooked on this whole like, well, fuck, if I can do this, I can help other people do this. So that's where the first inkling of like coaching came in. I won't say that a Beachbody coach is a coach by any means, but you have the potential to be, for sure. You can bring people along with that journey and get them started. And then, man, when you start seeing other people take a chance on themselves and get results, it is like a drug. It is like an addiction where you're like, yep, this is it. And it was in that moment that I was like, so I can still serve a community, just a lot different community. I'm not getting shot at. I'm not in any danger and I can actually help people improve their lives, holy shit, I think I found my new calling. But it wasn't until another 4 years that I realized that with what I do now with Next Shift, and that cops would end up being the community that I was called to serve. And I had to go through all the shit that I went through, the good, the bad, and the ugly, to be able to speak to cops, because we are stubborn and we're not listening to somebody that doesn't know what we're talking about and what we're going through.
Oh yeah, no, and there's so many things in what you just said that I want to unpack. Um, I'm sitting here giggling because you said that you were a pessimist, and the glass is half full or half empty. And I always would say, I'm not a pessimist or an optimist. I'm a realist. The glass is twice as big as it needs to be.
I literally just
And
talked to Medina Baumgart about that the other day. I go, what is with these fuckers keep saying I'm a realist when they know they're just being an asshole and they're being
the glass is twice as big as it. Why is there such a big glass? It's
yeah.
ridiculous. You don't need that bigger glass. Not going to wash it or not. Anyway. So it's amazing that what you said was, who in the military and even in the police academies, the classes bond together. And having been in the training division and been an FTO and a trainer and all that stuff, I would see that magic happen and people start gelling. And it's because they are going through shared hardships.
Yeah.
Being there at 4:30 in the morning for the formation runs and the PT and then defensive tactics and driving and all of the things. And, the ups and downs of 5 or 6 months of being together during an academy and being at the beginning of your careers and forming those relationships, whether it's through boot camp or the fire academy, the police academy, or even in your family going through hard times. Those shared hardships and doing hard shit make you a different person. It raises your threshold of things that you're capable of handling effectively, and that becomes your new baseline. The other thing that you said that made me laugh is speaking to cops and coaching cops. I will tell you, having almost 2,000 hours in front of classrooms with cops, firefighters, all first responders, either teaching for the government or teaching the local academies or the state academy, they are the worst people ever because, one, they don't want to be there.
Yep.
It's mandatory training or it's in-service training or it's something stupid that they don't like to do.
Yep.
Like, I don't want to learn how to drive today. I drive all the time. I don't need driver training. Or I'm a guy. I know how to shoot. I don't need to go to the range and learn how to shoot. When I was teaching emergency management for FEMA, firefighters would come in. They made ICS. What's a stupid cop going to teach them about incident command system? So you've got to grab them immediately, convince them that you are there to talk about what you're there to talk about, that you're the expert in the room, and to follow you. And that is a hard group. And anybody who's been to a first responder class knows that Monday is going to suck because everybody's walking around sniffing each other's asses to find out who the alpha is and who the cool guy is and who's not going to sit at my lunch table.
Yep.
And usually by Wednesday, it has devolved into anarchy. So everybody's friends, the dark humor, the inappropriate conversations are happening. It becomes now different agencies of the same people that are now together, and it's they're all speaking the same language. They're comfortable with one another, and it's because of those shared hardships and doing hard stuff together, they can relate to each other. So I think with your experience going into the mentor and the long off ramp transition coach, especially with your experiences and transitioning, learning how to take cop talk and turn it into business talk. I think that's one of the things that is scariest of anything else, because how am I going to translate my experience into making sure the TPS reports are done on time? And I try to tell people who ask me questions like that, I'm like, well, if you mess up, is anybody going to die?
Yeah.
Well, no, then it's an easy day, man. nothing you do in the civilian world as far as decisions, for the most part, unless you're a doctor or a first responder, or, obviously use your judgment when applying what I just said. It's not going to result in somebody losing their life or going to prison forever.
Yeah.
So the stakes are much lower. You have time to figure that stuff out. And I think that we're so hardwired to absolutes in what it is that we do that it's either perfect or it's nothing. And to find that out the long way, I think what you're doing is absolutely necessary. It's vital, because everybody's afraid to make that jump. They think that this is all they are. because they've been told there's 10 people waiting to take your job.
Yeah.
You're lucky to be here. We're the best agency organization wherever. And, I've heard it from around the country, traveling and teaching. I hear it all over the place, and listening to these podcasts, I hear it. And it's just, God, you're so much more than that. And biggest hypocrite right here. I believed it hook, line, and sinker.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it cripples. We cripple ourselves. We allow it.
100%. And it's one of those things that, again, you don't know what you don't know. So if you've never been through this transition, you don't know what the hell to expect. And you
Scary.
won't until you go through it. And it's going to depend. That transition is going to depend on how it happens. Again, is your back against the wall and you're fighting, you're clawing, and you're just trying to survive? Or did you get to prepare 5 years, 3 years, a year, in advance? And then I just filmed a video about this yesterday and I talked about it in a post today, but we have to prepare for the academy. You should have prepared for the academy, I should say. You have an academy that's months long that teaches you how to be a cop. You have FTO that's even more weeks long, teaching you how to practically apply the things that you learned on the street. And then you get to learn how to do it yourself. So why, when we're leaving this career, do we not think we need some sort of academy or something to unlearn the shit that we just went through for however long we were serving? You are a different person the day you leave this job from the day you came in. And anybody that
they don't
says
teach us how to
otherwise,
go home.
yeah, nobody teaches you that. And it sounds crazy to be like, you weren't taught how to be a human being. No, I was taught to be a robot. I was taught to come in and do what I was told to do and go home at the end of the night. I was not taught how to communicate with my spouse or my significant other. I was not taught how to engage with my children when I don't have kids, but you know what I'm saying, to engage with my family after a long day where I just dealt with 3 deaths or this or that, or got in a huge fight or whatever. And I mean, I am very, very, very adamant that we start teaching this shit from the academy through every year at in-service, that there is a wellness day, as much as you're going to roll your eyes, people, like a wellness day where you're not taught how to do the job or like what mandates were changed and what laws were changed, but a day where you learn how to be a freaking human being. And the 6 pillars of wellness are going to be talked about that day. And you're going to learn how to handle these things so that every year you're getting a little refresher. And maybe it'll start to sink in that, oh, I do need some balance. I'm not just the job. I'm not just a cop. Like, my family matters. And the more in balance you get those pillars prior to leaving, the easier that off ramp is going to be. Most of the time we're leaving this and we are on flat tires. We are done. And that's not ideal when you're transitioning.
No, even if you leave on your own, you're leaving with, if not flat tires, severely deflated tires, because like you said, you now have to figure out all of your stuff.
Yep. And there's nobody around you that gets it. You're now, maybe say you left and you went to a corporate job. They don't want to hear the horror stories. They don't want to hear the way you speak to people.
Or the worse than that, they want to.
Or they want to, and you're
what's
like,
the worst call you ever been to?
Yeah. Things that people don't understand. Yeah. Like, did you ever shoot somebody?
But if you share that one time, they're going to leave you alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, let me tell you.
And I will tell you, I've started to, when people say that, I have started to ask them, would you want to relive your most traumatic incidences? And it really shuts people down really quickly because as much as I would be willing to probably share things, like a normal person doesn't need to hear and see the things that we went through on this job. That is a very few chosen of us that chose to do this. We have to learn to deal with that. Nobody else needs to be traumatized by that shit.
Yeah, I can tell you the sound of a snap of a bullet coming by your head. Yeah. And I can't do it justice with words, but stand over there. Let me fire a couple rounds at you.
Yeah, see how it feels. Yeah.
Todd did not come in today. He called in sick.
It's a different world out there, and we have to learn how to be human beings again. We have to learn how to communicate in a different way. We have to learn how to be part of an actual team for the most part. Again, police work, we're told we're this big family and we're this big team, but for the most part, if you're on patrol, it's a pretty individualistic job. You're out there doing your work. You're expected to do your work, come in, go home, come back, do the same thing. Not always a team sport there, but when you're out here, a lot of these jobs you're a part of a team and you're expected to act a certain way and be a certain way. And your pessimistic mindset is not going to get you very far. That's for sure. Your jaded view of the world.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And I have found on some of the better squads that I was a part of, the people that were there, they understood interdependence, that we are there for one another. And if I'm going to be successful, we're all going to be successful because we're all pulling in the same direction. When you get into the corporate world, and this is just my observations from people that are in the corporate world, that not everybody's about that. And I think that was one of my hardest things when I transitioned from my military service post 9/11, coming back to the sheriff's office. I had worked with, and I'm not saying that my organization by any means was unprofessional. There were fantastic people there, very lucky in the region that we were in. But where I left, we had some of the most competent warriors and operators that had never been on the face of this planet, working on small teams out of a building here in Tampa that was just unrivaled. And you were valued based on what you brought to that team, not your rank. Your rank was what you got paid.
Right.
Everybody was on a first name basis. Trust was built, and anybody's shortfalls were shored up by others' strengths. So to go from that level of interdependence and independence based on your strength and what you contributed, to go back to, okay, now you're just in a zone and your contribution is these square miles.
Yeah.
It was kind of a hard thing because, I can say this now because it was more than 20 years ago. We would go and do live fire training, and the safety brief was, if you shoot me, we'll shoot you back. That's being said to a guy who has, 4 Purple Hearts. It's likely going to shoot you back.
Right. Yeah.
So, that level of professionalism is often not seen in the first responder world. And if it is, it's seen on specialized teams, and I can attest to that. But when you leave that and you go to whatever corporate job, you're not going to see that. You see it in very, the good to great type companies and corporations, but you're not going to see it as soon as you walk out the door.
Yeah.
And you need to realize that too.
For
that
sure.
What you're expecting, the professionalism that you're used to, you might not see again.
Yeah. It is definitely a different world. And I mean, I remember being annoyed as hell at the little positive pants that were coming into work and like, oh, just bobbing around. But again, like something quote unquote stressful would happen and they would lose their shit. I'm like, it is paperwork, for God's sakes. What are you stressing about? Like, holy crap, you don't have a bullet flying at you as you're doing this paperwork. You're going to be just fine. Or guys, there are 8 hours that you're getting paid to work. Work for the 8 hours. Whatever you fit in, you fit in. Like, you're fine. Like, it'll be okay if that work is still here tomorrow, type of thing. So it is a different world. It's a different way of being. And we talked about it, I think, on our episode, the importance of either buffer time when you leave this profession or a buffer job where you don't have to think necessarily. You're just going in, you're doing your job, and you're going home. You can leave all of it at work. You can truly leave your job at your job and come home and be present and do the things you need to do, build the side hustle that you're trying to build, do those kind of things to better yourself and better your family.
Yeah, no, and we did, and I agree with that 100%. The best thing for me when I retired was being still, and of course the journaling and getting my diet right and all the things that everyone is talking about, because it's true.
And that you now have time for.
Yeah, and that's the big thing that you now have time for. And I would recommend that if you don't have to get into something immediately, take that time. There's a lot of stuff to sort out, and you'll be better for it. You have to get everything quiet to really have those conversations with yourself and find out what it is you're feeling and doing and being called to do. So
yeah, and I think you mentioned it earlier just a little bit ago about, when you're on those specialized teams, ranks don't matter. And that is one thing that I wanted to bring to the debrief call that you mentioned earlier. Ranks are left at the door. Titles are left at the door. Anybody that comes to a debrief call, which if you're not familiar is just a monthly Zoom, they're planned out ahead of time, but it's a monthly, I say hour, but they usually go around 2 hours because cops like to talk, believe it or not. But it's a Zoom call where people hop on, and I don't want to say it's a vent session, but it is introduce yourself to the group. What are you facing right now, whether good or bad? And then the conversations just take off from there. And I remember right before the first time I hosted it, it was supposed to be a live in-person event. The panel just kind of dissolved right before it was supposed to happen. And I am a person of my word. So I was like, well, I'm going to pivot, I guess. We're going to do this in a Zoom. And it was probably the best pivot that I've ever had to take. It is my favorite call of every single month, despite all the interviews I do for podcasts and things like that. The debrief call is my favorite because I did not expect cops to get on a call with their cameras on and talk about the shit that gets talked about on that call and I have been blown away. This will be our 12th one this month, in November. I can't believe we've had 12. But it is my favorite call because the ranks, they go away and people are just willing to be seen. People see the OGs on my call talk and see what it's about and like. And then even if they're not on camera, they will at least come on camera and talk when it's their turn to introduce themselves. And I tell people all the time, you don't have to be on camera. You don't have to say a word. You can be the fly on the wall. You can type in the chat, hey, I'm so and so. It is what it is. You have to see enough people doing it before you're comfortable. And I respect that and I get that. I will meet you where you are. But so far, it hasn't really been the case. People are coming in and they're showing their faces and they're talking about the hard things. And it's giving permission to more and more people to do the same thing. And that is the only way we grow and we heal.
Absolutely. I've been on the debrief twice, and I was shocked when I got the invite the first time. I'm like, oh, this is great. Let me check this out. And I didn't know I could just sit there and be quiet because you called me, hey, Doug's here with us for the first. I'm like, and there was another Doug.
I was like, there was a Doug and a Doug.
But yeah, that actual call was the call that that I got introduced to the guy that helped me publish my book, and self-published, and Adam Davis. I got with him through that call, and this last one I was on, you said, hey, Doug just wrote a book. I'm like, oh,
oh shit, it's
Doug?
me.
Did the other Doug write a book too? So it was really cool. And I was amazed by the people on there, the things that they were sharing, and everybody was in different points in their journey. And you're right. The debrief is such a cool experience. And, yeah, just the free flow of ideas and just people talking, just having a conversation. It was really cool. I'm glad you're doing it. The next one's November 21st. Yes.
November 21st at 6:30 Central Time. And I have to laugh because anytime somebody asks me to do, say, a dual thing with them and do you have a presentation? I'm like, no cop wants to sit through a fucking presentation. No offense. Cops want to just have a conversation. And we're not used to that because we're forced to sit through presentations. So as unprofessional as it may seem, I don't do presentations. When I had to have slides for the first in-person speaking event I did in September, I was gagging. I was like, I don't want to do this. But I knew that I needed something visual on the screen for the people who do learn through something visual. I kept them incredibly minimal. I think I had 7. And it was just a few words, or it was here's a picture, here's a QR code for later if you want some resources. But death by PowerPoint is not how cops learn. They don't want to do that. They want to have a conversation. And that is what I'm here for. So if you're ever on a call with me, we're not having this strict layout of this is how this is going to be. We're going to have a conversation, and wherever it goes is wherever it goes.
Yeah, I know. I dig that format. The Next Shift Academy.
Yeah.
You want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, that is my next favorite thing I think I've done. So the podcast and debrief are probably my 2 absolute favorite things I've done in my life. But Next Shift Academy, I just really saw a need for, one, you got to have somewhere to go to start learning how to be a normal human being again. And where better than somewhere full of cops, former and current, who have been there, where you can hear 8 different people talk, or hopefully it grows when we launch again in December, but you can hear people who have been there, who have done that, what you need to sidestep, or what resources do they have? What connections do they have? How can you grow your web? And for those coming in, again, most of them are a fly on the wall. They don't even know what questions to ask. And it's not until those of us who have been through it are talking in a post or on a call where they're like, oh, well, now I have 8 questions because I didn't think about that. So this is an off social media academy. It's on a platform where there's an app and a website. But I was learning over the past 2 years of talking to cops, and again, getting private messages, but people weren't willing to comment on posts or share the things there. Or if they were, they felt the fear of somebody seeing it. So I was like, I gotta have an option. I gotta have an option. And finally I was like, let me just create this off of social media. You can come here when you are dealing with social media, 1 to 5% of your network are seeing your thing. So people aren't getting the direct information. They may love what I have to say on things, but they're missing 80% of the posts that I put out there that they could relate to or have see a piece of them in that post. So this is just an opportunity to bring current and former cops together. They can directly communicate one-on-one via group or one-on-one chats. We have semi-daily posts to encourage new habits of what life is like out here, the healthy habits that you can develop, and you can start developing them in your career and become a better person in your career. Trust me, it's going to make it a lot easier to get the hell out of there when it's time. We have a weekly shift session is what I call it. You talked about terms earlier. People hate the word coaching. So we've now called it a shift session where we're shifting mindsets. We're shifting perspectives of things. Like we're getting on the call. I may have a plan of what we're going to talk about, but if that's not what people end up talking about, we go with the flow and we let whatever happen. And then every other Saturday, I host an hour-long power hour, I'll call it, where I didn't think about the people who have to apply for jobs, look for jobs, do their resume while they're in still, because I didn't have to do that. And when that was brought to my attention, I was like, oh, well, I can give them a focused hour of time where they bring that work and they, for an hour, sit there and they research the companies they're wanting to apply for. They actually do the applications. They tailor their resume for that specific job. They have camaraderie here where if they have a question on something, they can just ask it to the group. That is one call where we have our screens off and we're all doing our own work. But if we have something, we hop on and say something. The other calls are recorded because you're never going to find a time where everybody's available to have the call. So we record the call, we post it, and then people can use that. I've been creating worksheets for each call that people can use. We don't meet on debrief week because that's the important call that week, getting people to that call and having that free option there. So Next Shift Academy is a paid community, and that is because there's live coaching or shifting or whatever you want to call it involved in that on multiple occasions. And again, it's more targeted. It is specific to current and former cops only, very targeted information about adjusting to life after law enforcement, the transition itself, bringing guest speakers in because believe it or not, I don't know everything about the transition. So getting to bring in other experts to help people and have people relate to them, having the founding partners take responsibility for a call. That was part of when they signed up. They said, yeah, I'd like to teach a call on X. And so throughout this academy, they're going to get the chance to step up and lead the call and figure out what it is they want to teach and train on and talk about. Because it's important that we all start finding our voice and sharing it however we can. So I'm super excited about it to launch officially for everybody December 22nd. Right now, we're trying to figure out the flow we like. We're trying to figure out what actually hits and what doesn't hit with people and make it the best it can be before we open it to everybody else. And once it takes off, man, then the rest of fire and EMS, dispatch, first responder families will each get their own group that they will have support for.
That's fantastic. Yeah. That's great. I want to make sure that we find out or we get that information out to everybody in the show notes. I'm going to have all your links in there and all that stuff. But for those who don't scroll down and read, where can they find that stuff? I mean, where are you at on LinkedIn? Of course, I know the answers to these, but
yeah, no, that's fine. So on LinkedIn, it's just Jessica Reed, Reed Flores. You can find me there, and basically everything on LinkedIn is what I've put on Instagram, which is _next_shift_. That is going to be mostly police related, but also lessons learned, a lot of mindset stuff. And if you want to see the shit show that was from 2018 to now, scroll back and see the version of myself I was in 2018, just starting this fitness journey to where I am today and all the different iterations of myself and different business opportunities I was a part of. You'll see the whole thing. You'll see that, man, you don't quit. You just keep freaking going. And I will tell you every day for almost 7 years now, February will be 7 years, I have been on social media sharing something about this journey. It's exhausting, amazing. But it's worth it.
Yeah, I was going to say exhausting. I'm getting to the point where I'm not going to say I'm getting good at it. I'm getting not bad at it.
You're doing fantastic.
Well, you're just saying that, so I won't hit mute. Put in a different word. But trying to keep up with that, it's like, well, what do I do? I'm not that interesting. And then I realized here recently that people don't want to see me reposting what someone else is thinking. Oh, yes, I agree with that. Read this.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
They want to hear from me. I want to hear from me. Those are the ones that hit. I mean, I listened to the episode that we did together on the way to an appointment yesterday, and I started getting misty. I'm like, my God, who's this person? This is not who I was a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's amazing. So to be able to go back and see your journey over the last 7 years. That's going to be cool. I'm going to have to scroll through that
Oh,
myself.
it is a shit show. But man, I will tell you, even I go back, especially if I'm struggling, I will go back and I will look at it. I always tell people, don't look in the rearview mirror. You're not going that way. Look through the windshield. But man, sometimes you really need reminded of how freaking far you've come. And when I go back, it's just like you said, I was posting everybody else's thoughts or words or quotes or things like that. I was hiding behind fucking Snapchat filters and photos. Like it was all this stupid shit. And I'm like, you can literally see the unraveling of figuring out who I was. And it wasn't until, again, guys, I got out in 2016. It's been 8 years. It wasn't until last month, I think, I came on and I did a video where I was finally comfortable not even explaining, just saying, I am Jessica. And being like, period, hard stop, end of story. I am Jessica. I didn't have to be Wes's wife. I didn't have to be Jeff and Tammy's daughter. I didn't have to be an ex-cop. I didn't have to be any other description other than I am Jessica. And I will tell you, I cried. I was in the middle of my workout listening to a podcast and I just started crying because I was like, holy shit, like what, not a lot of people get to that point in their life. And it takes, you guys can watch it on the shit show of Jess Flores, but it takes a lot of work, daily intentional work. And it takes being able to see when the hard days come to face that hard day head on and just say, I guess we're doing this again, and fight through it and get through it. Every time you try to sidestep it, go around it, under it, over it, like you're just delaying the inevitable. Face it head on.
You've got to own the ugly.
Yeah.
You do. You have to own every bit of it. And when you do, life becomes so free. I think that's one of the hallmarks of everybody's message that I've had to sift through a lot of this space, I guess I'll call it, is what they call it in the virtual world.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of folks out there that are selling whatever message, and it's not how I receive. And they're doing well and good for them, but it's not how I receive messages. Yep. And I was dismissive until I had a conversation with my wife, and she's like, whoa. She said, you'll notice that Brene Brown, Mel Robbins, Jocko, Sean Ryan, they're all basically saying the same stuff because it's the human condition and they have their stuff figured out and are figuring it out. But it's just, the bass in Jocko's voice, that's what I resonate with, or his experiences, that's what resonate with me. So we all receive from different people in 100%. Different ways. So I'm not going to say that their way is the wrong way. Right. It's just not the way that I receive. And once I started funneling that stuff out and bringing in the people that speak to me and that fill me, I have found those little the prints that they're leaving. Yeah. Mike Sorelli says that success leaves breadcrumbs. And, people that are successful and who want others to be successful just because they want them to be better, right? They leave those breadcrumbs and those footprints. So it's up to us to find those and follow them and what speaks to us.
We are only meant to talk to the other yous of the world. So I'm only meant to talk to the people who are meant to receive my message. I cannot concern myself with who's not hearing it or who hates it, or it's not meant for them. And thank God the internet just has a block button, and I can use that block button very much and just say, not in my corner. Sorry, not today. If you're not in this arena, you can get the hell out of here. I'm going to keep going. And my message is speaking to those it's supposed to speak to. It's not for everybody. And the sooner you can realize that when you're showing up, creating content for anything, the better. You are not for everyone, and realize that everyone's not for you. So why are you trying to be for everyone? Stop. Talk to the people you're supposed to.
Yeah, I haven't experienced bullies yet or anybody being critical. And old Doug 2 weeks ago would have said, "Oh, stand by. Here's an address or a 10-digit grid. We can meet here." Whatever the case is. But I've realized lately in myself that you're absolutely right. That I'm not going to be speaking to everybody. Yeah. And if my message is not one you're receiving, then either keep scrolling, or I could just say, I hope one day your heart's in a place that you can receive this, or I hope that you heal yourself or find something that you're going to find peace with, instead of just being angry and, F that guy, or, all right, tough guy, whatever. Yeah. So yeah, I've got to learn. I'm just through the threshold on my own journey here, and it's going to be fun going forward. And one of the things that I did not bring up, you're a former cop who's transitioned out and helping others transition out.
Yep.
but you're also a Leo spouse.
Oh God, yeah, I hate that title, but it is what it is.
Well, I didn't want to say, well, you're married to a cop too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
no, but what's that? I mean, it's, yes, there are Leo couples, but you have the opportunity to have a foot in both worlds. What has that been like, trying to be on your own journey to transition away from that? But like, I want to hear about your
Yeah,
day.
it's
You know?
it's been a journey for sure. I mean, starting way back with the transition. So again, he was in it, and while I don't remember any distinct times where I will say, jealous of him, it was hard to watch him get to keep going to work and doing his job when I wasn't able to. That was difficult to work through, but we worked through it. It finally got to the point where part of me was really glad I got to still have somewhat of a foot in it, but be so removed from it. Back in 2016, oh man, that's when like our area got hit really hard with the officer and the line of duty deaths. Thankfully, nobody we knew back then. Um, but it progressively got harder as I started growing through this and realizing the dangers that I faced every freaking night and just didn't think of as danger, watching him go out there. And it came to, I don't even know what to call it. It came to a head in 2020 when all the bullshit was going on and he was having to go to work. And thank God his city wasn't necessarily part of that, but our Kansas City is right here. It's a neighboring agency to that. So shit was going on, and it was not uncommon for anybody in this area to have to go there and help them with what they were dealing with. So that came to like a, I don't want to say boiling point, but man, every method of everything I had come up with to help me through hard times and anxiety and depression, it went out the freaking window. There was nothing working. And I was like, what the fuck? So finally I went to the doctor and I was like, I need something to make my brain stop. Like I've got to have something. And so I got on medicine reluctantly. I did, and there's nothing wrong with medication. If it's needed, it's needed. My experience with it has always made things 10 times worse. And in 2020, we were supposed to get married in May of 2020, but COVID. So we had to postpone that. We ended up getting married September of 2020, which was after all the chaos and most of the riots. But I remember now looking back at our wedding and just being this shell of a person. I had zero emotion either one way or the other. And that is not how your wedding day should be. It should be full of joy and full of things. And I was like, God dang, well, that sucks. But hey, we made it through it. Um, Thankfully, it's gotten less violent, if you will, but these killings aren't stopping. And we've had 2 officers on his department now get killed in the line of duty, which has been hard. Going to a cop funeral when you're no longer a cop, but very much feel like you're still part of that family is probably 2 of the hardest days I've had to face since transitioning out, especially the last one, since it was actually a friend of ours. That smacked both of us in the face, definitely me, because, and I tried to tell him this. One, I was so thankful that I had been a cop and he could talk to me about things that most wouldn't be able to talk to their significant other about. I was so thankful that I was that. But I had to explain to him, like, I'm grieving this from so many different vantage points. One, as a prior Leo, how dare you kill my fucking brother and our friend? As a Leo wife, all I'm thinking about is what if that was you and what the fuck I would be doing right now. And that is a very hard, I can't let myself get there. Um, and then as a friend and as the strong female of our inner circle group, the friends he has on the departments, their wives. None of them are cops. None of them are ex-cops. I get to be the voice of reason almost between the 2 sides of things when they're happening, which again, I'm thankful for. I'm thankful I get to be that. But that has been the toughest part. And while I understand this job is a calling, I would never push him getting out. Like that's his decision. Like he has to make that. As much as I don't love him being out on the street, I get it. Like I get what that's like. And like,
Yeah.
you're not just going to willy-nilly give that up. I get how hard it is, how scary it is. But I mean, he's lived with me for the past however many years now. So he's seen me change and transition. He has seen me talk about other people's stories. He's heard the podcast. He gets to keep hearing these things and hopefully they resonate. And if, until he's ready to be done, he's not going to be done. But it is hard to watch the things that happen on police departments, the struggles that they face, to see myself in him from back then and just be like, I want to shake you. Come on. But you can't. You can't make them do it. You just keep showing up as you and the version that you've become, and eventually it'll happen.
I love that. That's great. Well, I appreciate your time. I know it's very valuable, and thank you for sitting with me today and giving us some of these things to think about. I cannot wait. Well, one for the debrief. I can't wait to see what you do in the future. It's been great. So, any parting thoughts for me?
Oh man, I want to reiterate, like I do on almost every call, that anybody listening to this, you are more than just a cop. Please do not fall into that mindset. I know how it feels. I was there. Doug was there. We understand that it's there, but I encourage you to, one, realize you're more than just a cop. Two, realize that you are not alone with anything that you are feeling or facing. Somebody has been there. Somebody has done that, and somebody is willing to listen. I promise you, this group of us that has transitioned out are probably some of the most helpful people I've ever seen in my entire life. Not one person has been like, don't talk to me, or ignored me. Like, every single person has been willing to share and listen to other people who are where they used to be.
Well, that is wise words. So thank you very much again. And until next time, this has been Tell Your Story.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.